What is up, YouTube? It's D-Walk here. I'm here with a new video. I'm going to be making a tier list for a draft league that I'm in. It's the Squirtle Squad Battle Group and Team Life Orb VGC Draft League. And so it's a VGC Draft League. We're using Series 9 rules, so there's no restrictors or any of that. And I think, as you can see here, I have the teams here. And we're just going to get into ranking some of these teams. Just to start off, some of my criteria for ranking these teams. When I'm looking at a draft team, there's kind of four things that I'm looking for as I'm going through these teams. The first thing, especially in VGC, I find speed control is really important. And that might be more towards my playstyle, but I just find it's really important, whether that's Trick Room, Tailwind, Icy Wind, Electro Web. There's lots of different kinds of speed control, but I think it's really important on a draft team to be able to have ways to control that speed. The second thing I was looking for is kind of just the overall bulk and defensive synergy of the team, being able to mitigate damage output, switch things in safely, and just kind of have a good, solid defensive core. And then I'm also looking for the offensive. Obviously, in Pokemon, you need to be doing damage and making sure that the team has good damage output across the board, and it's not relying too heavily on one or two people, or that it's not just that there is good, consistent damage output. And the final thing is just kind of how the team works together. You know, you can have a collection of really good mods that don't necessarily work well together, whereas there's really good combinations, some really good things. And so that's kind of what I was looking at as I'm making these tiers lists. So I guess we'll just come over here. It's loading, but we'll just go through each of the team lists and I'll think. So we're going to start off with Michael and the London Lucarios. So his team here, as I'm looking through it, I really like his team. He has really good bulk. When you look at Incineroar, Gothitelle, Ferrothorn, Raikou even, talks a lot, Oranguru, Avalugg. A lot of these are very bulky mons that have some good, Incineroar is probably the best pivoter in the game. And so I really like that. You have things like Fake Out. You have Trick Room for speed control. You have Trick Room Gothitelle. You have Trick Room on Hatterene. Talonflame for Tailwind for faster mode. So there's a lot of options he has here. The one thing that as I was looking at this is that it seems to be lacking consistent damage output. You're relying a lot on Hatterene if you're in Trick Room. If not in Trick Room, you have Dracovish and Raikou a little bit. But outside of a couple of mons, there's just damage output lacking. And so for that reason, I put the London Lucarios, like I said, defensively probably the best team in the draft, but offensively they're just lacking a little bit, so I'm putting them in A tier. Next up, we have the Twinleaf Piplups, Neil Patel. Now, obviously, I think Neil's going to do really good in this. He's a very experienced VGC player, but these rankings are strictly on teams themselves. And for me, when I look at Neil's team, he definitely has some really interesting things. As far as speed control goes, Galarian Articuno is a great speed control in of itself. It gets access to both Tailwind and Trick Room, which is really useful. Tapu Koko can use things like Electro Web. Pheromosis can speed swap with it being really fast. So overall, it has pretty good speed control, I would say. He doesn't have any real Trick Room mode here. And I think he could get exposed by Trick Room players playing right. But defensively, I also see some just, Tapu Koko, Articuno, Pheromosa, Kartana. A lot of these are a little bit frailer mons. Blastoise is obviously really good. It's a really good bulky mon, can do a lot of damage, gets the G-Max water move to get passive damage, but I just feel like overall, it has good offense. Kartana and Pheromosa are great offensive outputs. I also really like, a lot of the mons, Blastoise, Tapu Koko, Articuno, and even Pheromosa. A lot of those top-end Mons really function really well as either support Mons or attacking. They can kind of fill either role. One thing I will say is the bottom half of Neil's draft is really weak. Togepi, Salazzle, Pichu, Glaceon. There's nothing here that I'm really that scares me or that I'm worried about bringing. I think there's maybe 8 or 9 Mons that he will bring on a consistent basis, unless there's obviously you can meme. But overall, I just feel like it's good, but it's not a great team in and of itself. And so for that reason, I have the Twinleaf Piplups. There it is. I have them in the B tier. Next up, we have Nico. This is an interesting team here. Obviously, Togekiss, Garchomp, Heatran, all really good Mons, very relevant with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl just coming out. But there's just some things here that I think are a little awkward. Snorlax is a really good Mon, but his only Trick Room, it really wants to operate in Trick Room. And Jellicent is an okay Trick Room center, but it isn't super consistent. Crobat can get Tailwind, so that's good on that side for speed control, but I just feel like there's some missing stuff missing there. That there's just not great consistent speed control. Overall, there's some good bulky things that have pretty good bulk, nothing that is like super bulky. It's good bulk, good damage output, but it just nothing seems to be great on this team. And there's just some, it's good Mons. I don't personally see a lot of the synergy. And so for that, Nico is going to be being put in our C tier. Next up, we have Matthew Chaw with the Tennessee Tortugas. So this is another team that seems to be lacking in speed control. You have Bronzong, which can be really good for Trick Room, but then it just doesn't seem like there's nothing on here. There's outside of maybe Goodra and Mandibuzz a little bit, there isn't any Pokemon here that really thrive in Trick Room. No sort of Tailwind. You have a Rain mode with Politoed and Seismitoad, which gives you some good utility. But then there seems to be a little bit of off with some of the synergy. Again, I feel like it's one of those things that there's good bulk but not great bulk, and there's good damage output, but there's definitely, you're relying really heavily on this team with Thunderous Eye and Seismitoad, Goodra, and maybe Virizion if you're bringing it. But there's a few Mons you're relying really heavily for damage. Overall, I think it's definitely not a bad team, but it's definitely on the lower half, and I'm going to be putting it into C tier. Next up is Steven, who is the coach of the Seattle Marinis. Sorry, there's a typo on my tier list with this one, but he has, I would say, offensively the scariest. One of the scariest drafts from an offensive perspective. Dragapult, Nihilego, Azumarill, Alolan Marowak, all can put on huge offensive pressure. Cobalion is a huge thing. Being able to have that combination of Dragapult, Cobalion can be really, really intimidating, whether it's going for beat-ups or Dragapult can max. There's a lot of things there. Mamoswine has really good damage output. And so, as I said, this is a really scary just poke team offensively. I feel like speed control is lacking a little bit. Butterfree is good speed control with Tailwind, Rage Powder, but it's just so frail it's not going to do much else for you. Same with, Gothorita, Adino. They can maybe help in a Trick Room matchup, Tangrowth. There's some options here, but I just feel like it's lacking in the ability to really switch a lot and be able to pivot, change positions, and then just having consistent speed control. I think knocks it down from being a great team. And so while I think this is the best offensive team in the draft, I actually currently have it in the A tier. Next up is Mega Umbreon with the United Umbreons. Again here, my big problem here is a lack of consistent speed control. Yes, you're going to get max airstreams from Celesteela, Landorus T, Suicune. If you're able to survive a hit or two, you can get off a Tailwind. Chandelier potentially can Trick Room, though there's not anything here. Drampa maybe wants to go in Trick Room, but there's not a ton for that. Overall, I think this is definitely an interesting team. It's pretty good, bulky. Landorus T gives you good intimidate. Silvally can be very diverse in a draft league. It has a lot of different options you can do with it. Ditto's interesting. Serena, Pikachu can feel niches. Celesteela. These are all like good mons and things that are, I feel like, can good, and there's definitely a lot of potential in this, but it just doesn't seem like as scary as some of the other teams or as consistent. And so for that, I also have the United Umbreons in the B tier. Next up, we'll come over here to Vincent. Now, the Auto Superiors and Vince with me, we had a little bit of some drama in the draft. We both seemed to snipe a couple things from each other. He really wanted Regidrago, and so he went ahead, and one of his bought tiers is Ice Cube the Penguin that he bought just to spite me. I got a Pokemon that he wanted, and he knows that I like Ice Cube, and he got that just to spite me. And so because of that, because of the drama and everything, I'm going to be putting Vince in the D tier. But actually, in reality, he does have a pretty good team. Charizard, Whimsicott is super scary. Weezing, Regigigas. Ice Cube doesn't really fit. I love Ice Cube. As some of you may know, it's one of my favorite Pokemon, and I think it can be very underexplored, but usually you want it with some sort of redirector, which there isn't here. And so you have some mons like Ice Cube and Poltegeist that want to set up, but no real way to help them set up consistently. But like I said, the Charizard, Whimsicott, Weezing, Regigigas, Latios offers some good things. Overall, Vince teams, in reality, is an A team, is an A tier team. Next up, we have Paul and the Ohio Oshawots. So I actually like his team. There's some really good. You got a Sand Core with Excadrill, Tyranitar. Comfy can pair really well with Tyranitar as well for activating a weakness policy, maxing. Offers good Trick Room. Can have a really good Trick Room mode centered with, Amoonguss, Tyranitar, Comfy, Meowstic can help with that. Fletchinder can help with speed control. It technically does have priority Tailwind. For damage output, I like Inteleon and Naganadel. I actually really like both of those picks to do some stuff. Amoonguss provides great utility. Galarian Zapdos, I feel like, is really well. Overall, I feel like this is a very solid team. There's nothing that's like hugely like, oh, that's way overpowered, that's going to dominate. But it's a good team that I have in the B tier. Next up, we have Austin. Now, Austin has a really interesting team. On one side, you have some really powerful mons with Spectrier and Regieleki. I think those are both very strong A-tier mons, top tier, really consistent mons. The DD female for redirection is really good. But then after that, I just don't love the composition of his team. You have that mode that's this super fast, hyper offensive, but then some of your bigger damage dealers you have Rhyperior, Corviknight, that really want to thrive in Trick Room, which you do have Aromatisse as a Trick Room setter, but that just doesn't feel very consistent to me. Overall, I just feel like there's some weird speed tiers where there's not enough mons to really fully commit to a really fast mode, and also not necessarily enough slow mons to fully commit to a Trick Room mode, so you're kind of caught in the middle. I find it lacking damage output across the board. Yeah, you have a Lecky can put in some damage, but not always. Spectrier can, but it depends on who you're playing. Going against Rhyperior can, again, but it really needs Trick Room. And so I just feel like, if it's piloted well, this can be a pretty good team. But as of just my first reaction seeing the team, I have Beware These Nuts in the D tier for this one. And then next up we have Ian, the LA Laprases. And so this is another team that I think there's some scary combinations. Obviously, Urshifu Rapid Strike Colossal is a very, very scary duo. And I think it's hard to sometimes, unless you have specific mons to deal with it, it can be a very scary thing to deal with in a draft league. Zapdos offers a lot of good defensive utility. It offers a lot of damage output. You have things like Alola Ninetales that can set up Aurora Veil, set off blizzards. Mimikyu can be scary, whether it's attacking with a Life Orb, setting up Trick Room if it needs to. It can be very diverse in how you use it. Umbreon can be really good to just soak up hits, stall out people's Dynamaxes. Overall, I really like this team. Like I said, I think especially the Urshifu Colossal tandem is really, really scary. Pairing that with Zapdos, that really helps with those water mons. Ninetales is good with this. I really like it. Ian's team here, and so he's going in the A tier. Next up, we have Aaron. Galarian Moltres, Regirock. Great Pokemon. You got you have a Raincore, Pelipper, and Kingdra, Ludicolo, Quillfish. But there's just some odd things in here. You have a Glacier, a Chansey that really want to be in Trick Room, but you have no way of getting Trick Room up. Same with Regirock. There's 3 Pokemon that all want Trick Room up and no way to really set it up. You're relying a lot on Kingdra and Moltres for damage output. You have things like Ninjask and Xurkitree that are really frail. Even Kingdra Pelipper can be quite frail. This whole team seems very weak to Electric. That's a big weakness. And so I don't know. It doesn't have great speed control. The synergy seems a little off. The bulk isn't quite there. And this is the next D tier that I feel pretty confident that this is a D tier. Beware These Nuts, I think, depending on how it's played, it could be a C or a B if it's played really well. But I don't see the potential in this. Other than Galarian Moltres being really good on itself, I don't see the potential for lots of this. I'm going to skip me and come back to me at the end. Next up, we have Jack, who doesn't have a team yet. And so just for this, it's a little premature. But for right now, he's just going kind of in an incomplete technically. But I'll put him down there in the D tier. Next, we have Christopher, I'm probably not going to say this right, but the Chakotami Shurikens. Which I think this is definitely an interesting team. Rillaboom is really scary. Dracozolt can put on some really good. Dracozolt Gigalith can be a really good thing. Rotom Wash is a really good Pokemon. Dusknoir can get good Trick Room. Drifblim is good. Overall, though, you're relying a lot on Rillaboom and Dracozolt for damage output. Registeel might help a little bit, but there's just not there. Dusknoir is good and there's some potential for Trick Room here. Landorus Eye is interesting, but I feel like in this max format, there's just a lot of it lacks the damage output you really want from a Pokemon like that. There's a big ice weakness I see throughout the course of his And yeah, you have Gigalith and Registeel and Arcanine to help with that ice weakness, but I just feel like this team can kind of be exposed in some. There's definitely some weaknesses and just some things that I'm not sure about. So I have this also in the C tier. And now for our last couple, we have Weiss's team, the Realist Rotums. I think I said Weiss. I'm not exactly sure if it's Weiss or Weiss. But they have one of the scariest teams. She has just probably two of the scariest combinations in the draft league with Venusaur, Torkoal, and Terrakion and Weavile. I think those two different combinations it's really hard to be able to confidently prepare for both of them. Then you have something like Klefki that can offer a lot of really good prankster support. I think prankster mons can be really, I've always really liked them in draft leagues. They just offer a lot of support. You have Porygon 2, which is a really consistent Trick Room setter, very bulky. Pairing it with something like Guzzlord can do a lot of damage. Torkoal and Trick Room, so you have this kind of a Sun Trick Room mode. Then you have Beat Up, Weavile, Terrakion, Swampert's good. I think this is a really scary team, and just based off of the team itself, I'm putting this will be our first. The Realist Rotums is going to be our first S tier. Next up, we have Jami with the Birmingham Buzzwolves, and I like this team. It has really good offensive output. You know, Urshifu Stray Single Strike, Porygon Z, Latias, Raichu is really good. Lapras is a great max option to be able to set up with Aurora Veil to just for damage mitigation. Same with Liepard, can do a lot of interesting stuff with Fake Out, Copycat. Again, it has access to Prankster, which is really good. Volcarona can put on some pressure. Salamence, I think, has potential to be good. Isn't great. I think overall this team lacks in speed control. You know, you're relying on Porygon Z to max strike to lower speed, or I think Salamence gets Tailwind. There's no real Trick Room on here other than Porygon Z possibly, but the speed control for me is a bit of an issue on this team, and so that's why while I find it it has a lot of really good offense, has some really good defense with Lapras. Overall, I think it's a B tier team. And finally, we'll go with me, the Utah Dracovish, and I will just preface with what I'm about to say with I'm probably biased towards myself. I drafted based on what I think is strong in Pokemon, what I think is important. But I really like the team that I ended up. I really like, I have Tornadus Eye. I think throughout the draft that I have probably the best speed control in the draft. I have Tornadus Eye that can Tailwind, it can Taunt, it can Icy Wind. There's a lot of options it can provide to help give me different forms of speed control. Togetic with Redirection, good, really bulky redirection. Alolan Executor, Stack Attacker, and Runerigus all get Trick Room. Being able to pair like a Riolu Stack Attacker for a Max Guard Copycat Trick Room. There's guaranteed Trick Room. So I think speed control wise, I think I have the best speed control in the draft. And then I have some really potent offensive options with Cinderace, Regidrago, Stack Attacker that can just output a lot of damage. Galarian Darmanitan can output a lot of damage if it's put in the right places. Kangaskhan gives you some good fake out things. And then Runerigus is, again, it's a really good Trick Room mom. It gets access to things like Will-O-Wisp, Iron Defense, Body Press. Really bulky, just can stick around, make things hard for the opponent. Sharpedo was kind of my last pick. It can do some offensive things, and it'll be interesting to see how it works in. But overall, I really like my team. I'm glad with lots of the things I was able to get, and I personally think I have an S-tier team. But like I said, that's probably biased, just because I'm ranking it off of what I think is important in Pokemon, and I drafted what I thought was important, and I was able to actually draft very similar to the team that I wanted going in. And so this right here, so we have our final tier list here. 2 S tiers, a lot of A and Bs, a couple Cs, and some Ds down there. But I will say overall, just some final thoughts, I think this is going to be a very competitive draft. I don't see a lot of separation between, any 2 or 3 tiers. I can see a team in D tier competing up with the teams in A and B tier, and I can see, C and it's a very close thing. And while, yes, I had to split it out and I tiered them for this video, I think overall that it's a very evenly matched draft league I'm really excited to see how it goes for watching. And so thank you for watching my video. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you think I'm crazy, tell me. And I'm excited to hear what you think of this, and I'm excited to have more content coming in the future in regards to both this draft league and some other just general Pokemon content that I'm looking to make. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.